call, this is the May meeting of the VHCA Board of Directors. Hey, John. I'd like to have a motion to adopt the agenda, please. So, with comments, without objection, it is adopted. We were hoping to have a Zone 6 rep here today. Major Pete thought somebody would be here, and they may come in during the meeting. So we, having no other officials here, we will move right on to...
Actually, I'm here on behalf of State Senator Nan Orrock.
Please introduce yourself.
Thank you. I'm Elaine Govis. I'm the campaign manager for State Senator Nan Orrock, who obviously represents this district in Fulton County. And I'm just here on her behalf to check in with you guys. I tried to make it to the meeting last month, but got curtailed somewhere else. But just wanted to let you know the senator appreciates the support that you guys have given her. If there's anything that we can do for you all, just let us know. Feel free to call her. I've got her business cards if you want them. It's got her direct line, or you can always reach me as well, and we'd be happy to assist you guys. Also, the senator will be putting together a group of folks to do a neighborhood cleanup at Perkins Park on Saturday in conjunction with Michelle Nunn. And that'll be Saturday morning from 9 to 12. And if you're interested in joining us, we'd love to have you. And I have some handouts if anyone didn't get them in your mailbox already.
Well, you're welcome to leave those. We don't, of course, we don't campaign here.
Certainly.
And so, but indeed, we certainly support Perkins Park and would be happy for this completely non-campaigning activity to go on this Saturday, and that's great. And
it's
we
totally campaignless.
We support that. Well, I like that word, campaignless. Campaignless. That's a good one. And if you want to leave your card here, we'll be glad to amend that, and we do thank you for coming. I'm glad you introduced yourself. And now we will, any questions for Ms. Orrick's rep? Is it Lillian?
Lillian, yes.
Thank you, sorry. All right, we will move ahead to the Planning Committee.
Okay, so we're going to D14084 and ask Erin with an E to talk about your plans.
Sure. My name's Erin Kelly. My fiance and I bought the house at 968 Virginia in December. We're applying for a variance to stay within the confines of the existing house structure to construct a bedroom and a laundry room on that side of the house. It does neighbor advance. No trees will be obstructed either.
So this is on the second floor. You're going
Yes, and
straight
it was uninhabitable space. The house was built in the 20s before the current laws were in place, so the house structure already exists.
So we'll get the Planning Committee report and then we'll call on you, ma'am.
I just want to know where it is.
Corner of Vance and Virginia Avenue.
Sorry.
Yes, ma'am.
I actually wasn't on that visit. If you want to report on that.
So I think David and I were there, and there were no tree issues observed, no stormwater issues observed. It's all within the footprint of the house. All the neighbors have been notified. Everything seems entirely kosher and in order. And I think
I do have a question, though.
certainly.
What is being built on the back of the house? It looks like something is going up there.
We have a permit for the other renovation going on in the house. So there is a carport with a screen.
Ah, okay.
Which is not part of the variance.
Right.
Okay, just wondered.
Yeah, that's a good question. Any questions or other comments for this applicant? What is the Planning Committee's recommendation?
Recommended approval.
Condition on a site plan stamped and dated. When is your site plan stamped and dated?
I have April 23rd, 2014.
And so that's the motion. Then the applicants have been notified, so that doesn't have to be part of the motion. It's been seconded. Is there all those in favor on the board? Raise your hand. That's great.
Thanks.
It won't be quite this quick next week. We look forward to seeing you there. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so B14067, which is 869 Virginia Circle. And we have Erin with an A.
Hi, my name is Aaron Clark. I live at 869, which is the corner of Virginia Circle and Barnett, with my wife and our 2 daughters. We are seeking a variance. We're essentially looking to remove the current partial second level and replace that with a new second story, and it'll also cause a gable to come out over the front porch, which is currently just a stoop, and construct a deck on the back. We are also seeking approval to construct a privacy fence which will extend from the back property line, which is currently has the same privacy fence put up by the back neighbor, and will run up to the back corner of the house. No trees will be impacted. All of the renovations on the house will stay in the existing footprint of the house. Based on speaking to members of this board at the site visit and on the phone, we have agreed to bring out the line of the privacy fence to run the same line as the neighbor behind me, which is 44 inches from the sidewalk, and we are also amenable to doing some planting in between the sidewalk and the privacy fence to help preserve aesthetics for new pedestrians. And there's been some confusion about that, but prior to our next meeting, I have already spoken to my surveyor about doing it, so I'll make sure that I get my site plan amended to show that distance away from the sidewalk, and I should be able to get that done this week.
Is that on the southwest corner?
Yes. It is. The house was damaged by water previously, or leaking. What was, site report, planning,
No tree or runoff issues. We have the neighbor notification, and we recommended approval to the board. So I'd make a motion, if that's okay, to approve V14067. It's based on the site plan stamped and dated 4/7/14, but to be amended to show that the fence, the privacy fence, will be 44 inches from the sidewalk, and will be, it is going to be the 4-foot privacy with the 2-foot opening at the top.
Correct, and what I did is I showed photos, and I'll show the photos to you, technically about current fences. So it's actually, and that shows you, because it's depending on where you measure from. I measured this, for instance, from the post on the ground, not from where the fence starts. So it's a little bit lower than that, so I don't know. I mean, that's obviously arguably 7 inches different than what you just said there. What we were trying to do is keep the uniformity of the fence that the neighbor behind me constructed. So our proposal was to do it literally exactly the same and along the same line as what he had constructed. My intention was to essentially take these photos, and when I amended my site plan, show these photos as an attachment to the site plan with the distance that the board had asked for as well.
And that was what the planning committee approved.
Yeah, no, that's what we approved. I think that's fine if we just need to get it in a form that can be attached to the site plan, so it's clear and it'll have validity. But we're in perfect agreement, and that's the fence that is in his backyard, is in their neighbor, and is speckled throughout the neighborhood now. Any questions to this applicant from anyone? Ready to vote? All those on the board who support this, please raise your hand. It is unanimous, and so, sir, we will see you next week. It won't be quite as fast. It'll be more like 8:30 probably. Right?
Okay.
So I doubt you'll be bored as much, but we'll see you there.
Thank you all very much.
Can we go on to the Parks Committee and an update on what we know about John Howell? Did y'all see the email that our expediters sent? You want to report on that? Our John Howell Park project, our renovation project, which we fully thought would be finished.
Well, is we don't have a permit permits. So.
We do not have a permit, and today our expediter, actually, I think we all thought it would be built well before now, and we don't have a permit yet. So I can only tell you that apparently the woes of the building department, the streamlined process is not as complete as it could be. But we do have our expediter, so glad we have an expediter. And Peter are working on it, and I guess we're gonna pretty soon be, in the note we shared today, looking at calling Alex and begging for some support here, because we're gonna be old people for that.
Is it just because there's some part that's parks and some part that's public works?
No, that hasn't come up, in fact. So
So we can anticipate additional delays?
No, Peter thinks that's not gonna be an issue, pray that it isn't, but, no, it's just a series of piddling corrections and objections that he makes. He's made 3 sets of them, I think, that are really nothing substantive, and then it disappears into the black hole. And our expediter wrote a frustrated tart note today, and that's all I think we can do is keep trying to slug it out, because we hear these stories on the board all the time. And
I guess that's not an encouraging sign that they even have a job of expediter.
no, that was the first bad sign, but in any case, we made some sour jokes about it on the Parks Committee, I can tell you that. Good thing we have an expediter, it would have taken forever. And at New Highland Park, we had a couple of issues with homeless folks, and really one of them was about police response, and I was hoping the commander would be here tonight, and maybe they still will, and if they don't, I guess we'll take it up at the NPU meeting next week. There was a delayed response, and then subsequent to that, there was some poor behavior that the police did respond to, and the folks did leave the park. So this is an ongoing issue. Since then, we have stepped up our presence in the park watching it. Lola was there at 7 this morning, and I've been by a bunch of times late at night, and we've seen no signs of overnight camping. But there is a homeless, there are folks who live there very well, in all probability are homeless, and if the behaviors are good, that's one thing, and if they're not, and we have bad behaviors, it is very much an issue. So I encourage anyone who sees or hears one to let us know and let me know right away. And if it's ongoing, I will go up and try to deal with it. And I've been swinging through repeatedly, fortunately it's close to my house. I went through on the way up here today. And it was, the rain had taken everybody out of the park.
And obviously, if anyone feels threatened, call 911 no matter what. It's a private park, but it has public park rules, and then the police can be called if anything happens you feel unsafe about.
Was there an issue with someone threatened?
There was a citizen who was verbally abused and called the police, and the police either did or did not come. According to them, they were there in 9 minutes. The resident never saw them, several. So that's just an issue that needs to be noted and improved, but it's done now. And then there was a verbal confrontation, which was unfortunate, and the folks left the park after the police arrived.
Well, that stuff that's been on Neighbor Next Door, it's like, why would the police not be able to enforce something on private property? They do it on private property all the time.
Yes, it would appear to, I know it's unusual, but it's possible that there was some misinformation on Neighbor Next Door. Somebody has called that to my attention. I'm stunned. Stunned.
It's rare, but it happens.
But in fact, that is very much not the case. There were things that approached physical threats. That's a crime, private, public, or any property. That's the one the police didn't appear on. If they had, I would have expected a warrant I would have expected an arrest to occur. The person who was threatened waited a while, but that's another issue, and those things happen, and we just gotta keep trying to work on that. And generally, the next time they came quite promptly, and were helpful, quite helpful, and there were no arrests necessary. The individuals left. But this is an ongoing challenge that we're going to be continuing to spend a lot of time and attention on. I'm going to report on a safety issue, which is that Peggy, who was not here, went down to code enforcement and got the ball rolling on a vacant and abandoned house that happens to be on Ponce, was the site of one of our variances. The contractor's been fired at the old one, so he tried as best we could tell to respond. The house is not properly boarded, and since then we provided the owner information that we had from the variance process, and we understand that they are, and the owner called us back on Saturday and pledged to comply. As luck would have it, I believe Colleen and her neighbor get a daily view of this out the back door, so we will be updated regularly. And the fear is that there will be a fire, quite honestly, or worse, and so we're trying to, the house was registered as a vacant building, it's expired and needs to be re-registered. The owner pledged to comply, and I hope that will be forthcoming. But in any case, Peggy will be following up on that. We just need reports.
If I'm keeping an eye on it.
Yes, I'm sure you are. I wish you would. And I think, unless there's other new business to come for the board, yes, ma'am.
I just want to say, I'm so sorry that Peggy isn't here. We live on Highland View, and the people in Atlanta have done a phenomenal job in doing our sidewalks. It's fabulous. It's fabulous. I can walk in my
I know, they
neighborhood.
look great.
It's really, really wonderful.
Unlike the park, it only took them 3 weeks to get the whole street done.
No, really, I mean, they blitzed
Yeah,
it.
once the
They
letter
blitzed
held
it.
for them, and yeah,
They did.
They did good.
And they were so nice and so, I mean, really, and
Have they moved?
I'll keep working until she gets here.
I think they moved on from email.
Yeah, I think they're done with
the
that.
street, but I'm not exactly sure where they are now.
Probably, but this is the thing,
Thought I
they
saw
come
you
back
walk
day
behind
after
me.
day after day to look over what they did, and then they have one final inspection. I couldn't believe how many times they came back.
So my prediction is if you'll come back and tell Peggy that.
No,
That you will be just as.
the next time I see her, yes, oh no, I will be just as effusive because it's really wonderful.
So she's going to tell you, quite rightly, that it took almost a year to get the damn
Oh, but-
ball rolling. But she
Absolutely.
deserves a gold star for a total of her
Absolutely,
assistance.
I agree.
Maybe we should have put it, maybe she should get an expediting license. John, you had your hand up. John?
Oh, I was going to mention, after you were talking about 1146 Ponds, there's two other code problems in the neighborhood too. In 1001 St. Charles Avenue, which is still unresolved because code enforcement keeps telling you they can't find the bank. That is foreclosed on the property, and the other is 1029 Greenwood, which is an unoccupied house that supposedly is for sale, and it's wide open.
Is that one pretty close to North Island?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's that one where the grass is grown up.
Okay.
But
So we wrote these down. If you'll send them to us, we'll bring to bear such modest powers between all of our modest powers. Maybe we.
well, I mean, I've already been in contact with code enforcement, but
Thank you.
that stuff just doesn't happen overnight.
No, it doesn't.
Unfortunately.
But thank you. Paige, you want to give a very brief Summerfest
Sure.
report?
Summerfest is moving right along. We've nailed down the artists, the musicians that will be playing, and that's been posted on the website.
Fans are getting good comments, I mean,
Yeah,
from folks out there.
John's our social media person and our communications person. We've got, the artist market has all been laid out. We're meeting later this week to do the vendor layout. We're still trying to get some people involved with Kids Fest, which has been a little slow this year. But
We are going to have the music stage again.
We are having a music stage. We've got the
Always
DJ
popular.
for that, and we've got several performers. We're just trying to fill in some gaps, but it's coming right along. And if anybody wants to throw in extra hands,
What's the volunteer count?
Friday is completely sold out, so that's always goes first, but then that's good. Saturday, we're about 60% of the way where we need to be, and the biggest holes are Kids Fest, so pretty much everything else is filled. Sunday, we're right at about 40 to 50%, but that's not entirely unusual at this point. Most of that is Kids Fest too. Some other artist market stuff needs to catch up, but we did a blitz through the street captains last week. It was fairly successful. We got a good spike from that. And it was in the Grady Graham this morning, so we're trying to leverage kids who need service hours. extent that we can, but it will, we'll be there, but it's always last minute.
He's here.
Sir, your timing is excellent. We were about to adjourn the meeting and we were hoping you would walk in. So.
Excellent. Y'all have to forgive me. We had on these particular nights, there are about 4 meetings that I have all at 7 o'clock. So usually I try to drop around and try to make them every now and then and put them in the circle, but excuse me for being late.
Not at all, sir. You have the floor.
Excellent, excellent. Well, just want to come by again. I know it's been a short minute since I've been here with running and doing the meeting rotations, but I know that there was, wanted to come and address one particular concern. I know when we specifically talk about crime overall, Zone 6 is doing well. However, we know that there are certain patterns of crime in certain neighborhoods. And particularly with this particular neighborhood, we had an issue here recently. They've just been breaking into cars like it's legal. And so we're trying to get those to slow down. We'll be bringing some additional resources in from other divisions. Actually, we're hoping this week we can get everybody in place. Also, just giving you the idea, we've already had the conversations. We're getting ready because we always expect crime to spike during the summer months. We will be bringing in some additional overtime resources so that we can put some more officers in the streets to deal with some of these critical issues. Particularly, that was that one with the Virginia-Highland Park, a response issue with that, and just to kind of give you a little background on that. I believe after doing the research, I wanted to kind of be hesitant before I put my foot in my mouth, but basically what happened on that particular incident, call came through at 911 about 3:53. It was dispatched at 3:54, and the officer was in the area on scene at 4 o'clock. So it took about a 6-minute response, and he wrote the area. But after going back and listening, because I wanted to hear from my own ears the 911 call and exactly what happened, the issue was no one requested that the officer actually speak to anyone. And so what my advice is on those particular situations, to ensure that you're letting them know that you are waiting and you want to speak to a police officer. Because I believe what his explanation was he rode the area, and after he didn't readily see anyone, he checked all the surrounding streets and did what we call a directed patrol in the area, but he never made contact with the person who was calling. So that's where we are.
Did he stop the car and get out and like walk into the park to see what was going on, or did he just drive by?
Not to my knowledge. Not to my knowledge, and I didn't ask that specific question, but we definitely wanted to know what happened with it. And I know our response times are generally outstanding, so it kind of concerned me that there was no response noted whatsoever, and so that's why I wanted to hear the actual 911 call. The director of 911 sent me the footage. First, they released it and told me what happened, but then they turned around and sent me the actual recording myself so that I could really hear what was going on. So we've had that conversation so that they know to look a little bit deeper, because usually what we'll do is just simply have the person call the caller back. We have 911 try to call us so that we can get that information and get it squared away, but that's been dealt with. And
I don't think it would occur to me if I was calling 911 to say, come and see me. I mean, I don't think I would think of that.
Yeah.
It's like, 911, come, and you expect them to come.
Yeah.
I don't.
It's easy when you have an address to where you're calling from, but when you're on a cell phone where it does not give you a specific address, and there's an issue, certainly in a public setting, always the best method is to just say, yes, I'm requesting. Because then oftentimes the dispatcher, which she didn't do, oftentimes they will simply ask, do you want to speak to a police
There you go. If that's a great.
Good to know.
I know because I've had to call 911 twice in the last month or two. Both of the times they've asked me,
Right.
to speak to the police officer.
Right, and I did recall that.
Well, I really appreciate your taking it on, because and going to the trouble you did, because the citizen thought she was there with others and didn't, so somehow we just missed. And that happens, and that's done, so now we just try to move on and do better the next time. And I did mention earlier that the next day there was a very prompt response, and the officer was very helpful in resolving a situation but successfully, and that was helpful. But I think this may be an issue for a little while there. Most of the citizens there are fine and law-abiding, and no behaviors and quite quiet. When there's an exception, it's a problem, and we just need to make sure that we're not confronting anybody without, we need you all there when that happens. So I appreciate your attention. John,
this wasn't mentioned in this particular case, but I'm wondering if this could be a problem too. with the 911 operators, because this is private property and is not a public park. And so it won't show up on city maps and on the GIS as a public piece of property. I'm wondering if a person makes a call from that park and they say they're at the corner of North Highland and St. Charles Place, is that going to be sufficient for?
Well, that intersection is sufficient, but you're absolutely right. The park itself is not listed in their system as a actual park. In fact, when the young lady called 911 and gave the actual, I'm at Virginia-Highland Park. It was like, Virginia-Highland Park, where is it? And they kind of went and she gave that intersection, which goes back to why the officer went to the intersection, and after he didn't see whatever, he just made the circle throughout the area looking on the streets, but he did not get into that particular green space. So that's something that we got to try to work.
Can I get with you later and figure out who to contact on the cartography piece, and we'll try to.
Absolutely.
We actually have a professional cartographer is what would have it. What a luxury. He happens to live here and would be happy to do it for him.
But I'm wondering, for future reference, if anything were to happen again, should we list the address of the park somewhere in the park? And then, is it one thing where people need to give that exact street address? I mean, do you guys require an exact street address?
Well, the key is getting adequate signage up so that people can see, for number one, that it is a private park, and for all intents and purposes at this point, we have to list it as a private park. Perhaps we may need to also look and see, and we'll get with Alex Warren's office to go back through GIS to see if by chance also they list that instead of having it at an intersection or just an address, but to somehow put a title to what's actually there as a park, because currently, I don't believe that's ever been done once the park has been in use because of it being private. So those are some things we're going to have to try to work through and figure out how we can better do it. Even with the park rules, we can't enforce, unfortunately, because it's a private park. And it's a similar situation that we have on the other side of Zone 6. We got the DeKalb Memorial Park, which is a public park, but it's owned by DeKalb County, but it sits in the City of Atlanta. We can't enforce our City of Atlanta ordinances because it's not a City of Atlanta park. So it's a little. We're trying to work on that issue as well. Yes, ma'am.
Usually, those people are mentally ill that are making threats. So, what actually happens when you pick them up? Do you take them to Grady, or do you take them to jail?
Most times, unless there is something that they're doing so egregious to where they're a harm to themselves, if they're a harm to themselves or something like such, we can kind of take them to Grady and do the paperwork to try to get them through a treatment. If they're not, then naturally we have to kind of try to work with the doctor to see if anyone's willing to sign off on a 1013 to force them into custody for treatment. Outside of that, if it's mild and they're clearly breaking a law, we can put them in jail for breaking that law, but what's going to end up happening 9 times out of 10, the judge is immediately going to take that person. Oftentimes they'll refer them back over to Grady just so they can get some type of prescription if they're off of, because usually they're going to have a history on that person, and from there they'll be released back out.
Well, that's what needs to happen.
Right.
Putting them in jail is dumb.
Yeah, it's a fine line. You're absolutely right. When there's mental illness, we got to figure out better ways of how to treat them and how to work through those situations. It's not clear cut, so sometimes, unfortunately, it requires going through pretrial first to get there, which is better than just not doing anything and walking away when someone clearly needs some help. So.
Can they be taken to the regional hospital for an evaluation?
Not forced unless they're willing. Not forced, they have to be willing to go, unless they're a danger to themselves, and then we can get the necessary paperwork to take them into custody.
Sir, thanks for coming. We know you're busy. I have one other thing I'd like to talk to you real quickly. And speaking of the name of this park, can y'all raise this issue, because we're talking about a minor name change for the park, and we need to put up better signage. Do you just want to
So basically it's been called New Highland Park, But, you know, it's on North Highland Avenue, so we've been discussing in planning and in parks, calling it North Highland Park, which Pamela didn't have any issue with. It's a little bit more, it identifies where it is, and it's not Virginia-Highlands Park, but North Highland Park. So we're just, you know, putting that out there if anybody has any comments on. And once we get it decided, we can probably try to get some more signage, which would help, because I understand the officer did ride by pretty quickly, and, I mean, it's clearly a park, but he just was confused and was then starting to look around. He didn't go into that park according to the person that made the call. So, any thoughts on North Highland Park versus New Highland Park?
No, I don't mind.
Okay.
I mean, I think the New Highland Park name served its purpose when it was new, but it's not new anymore, so it doesn't really make that much sense. But I think it seems to me the broader issue is how do we get these guys to recognize a park that is privately owned but is designated for public use? I mean, we clearly said we own it, but it's for public use, and it's open.
They can definitely go in when there's, again, when there's a safety issue. So there's no problem with calling the police if you feel unsafe for any reason. I would not hesitate to do it.
Lola, would it be possible to work out some sort of an arrangement with the City Parks Department where we would still own it, yes, it's our park, but if there could be some sort of a cooperative, not ownership, but I don't know exactly what kind of term. Yeah, or something, so that, in other words, city park rules could apply there without this differentiation of public and private. And it would allow the police to go ahead and do their thing without any hindrance.
No, it would have to be owned by the city for that to be recognized as a city park. So it's a private park. We put the same rules up, and the rules are listed in the park as the city park has. So we have the same rules, and we're allowed to enforce those rules.
But it's up to us to enforce, right?
Well, and it's up to us, and I mean, as Lola said, the police can come at any time if there's a problem in it. So it's not like they're prohibited from coming.
Yeah.
So I don't think that.
It sounds like their duty though is to enforce city law, not the park rules necessarily.
Well,
In a private situation, that's what we've got to get.
Yeah, it's kind of a gray area, but yes, you're.
And you're breaking the rules on our private property. This person is doing whatever we say you can't do.
I think the most important thing is what is dangerous. You're going to call about the dangerous stuff. I mean, we're going to go and, you know, try to deal with the situations where if somebody's sleeping there, I mean, I'm going to be up there every morning at 7 o'clock this month. And that's not something that's dangerous. I mean, we may not like it, but you can call when you feel threatened in any way, and the police will respond.
I don't think this last incident should be standard that we should hold them to. I think they'll have much better. I think that was just a weird occasion. Probably the first time they got a call to come to the line, maybe not come to the park.
But I think the way John said it is correct, that the city of Atlanta will enforce city law, but they're not going to enforce our own rules.
Or even city park rules.
Right. If we had a rule that said, no red tennis shoes allowed in the park, and there's 50 people walking around with red tennis shoes, the police aren't going to do anything about it, even though that violates a Virginia-Highland Civic Association rule.
It's like a rule. They'll respond to a request. If there's something going on that shouldn't be.
Correct.
They'll respond to that.
Correct.
They're not going to read that sign.
Yeah.
But as far as someone sleeping there, if I called the police and said someone is sleeping in my front yard under the bushes, they would come take them out. So it might be a simple thing of who has the authority to speak for the Virginia-Highland Civic Association and when someone should be removed from the park.
Right, and probably a number that's listed, and we'll talk further about that, a number that's listed that, but you don't want anybody to see that number, call it first when there's something dangerous going on.
Oh,
No.
absolutely
Call
not.
911. I'd rather that they called 911 and 911 said, I can't get that person out of the sleeping bag. But, thanks for your call. You just want to prefer they call that first. So, is there any other business that we have besides? Summerfest. Everybody signed up for a volunteer slot and a manager slot, which I couldn't do last 7th and 8th. That all? So we'll just call the meeting adjourned unless anybody has any other business at 7:30.
Cool.
World record.
Record.